Hey man, what it do, y'all? It is Apollo here, and we're going to be doing what if Yuji was Ghost Rider. I know it's a bit of a weird what if, but we're gonna do it regardless. So here's how things gonna go. You see, during the Finger Bear arc, a desperate Yuji, he would end up giving up control over the Sukuna in order to save his friends. This would prompt this King of Curses guy to obliterate the enemy, but he would also rip out Yuji's heart, and he would leave him to die in the rain. The thing is that instead of just simply dying here, something else would occur in its place. He would have dropped dead, sort of, but in reality, he would have actually dropped even further. He would have jumped deep into a void of sorts, and in here, he would have ended up encountering some sort of being that he genuinely did not recognize. They would look through Yuji's life and they would go on to ask if this was where he wanted to end things. Yuji would look and reflect for a second before denying this, saying that no, he still had so much to accomplish. He couldn't just leave his newfound friends behind just like that. They had barely survived back there, after all. The being would decide to make a deal with Yuji here. They would create a contract for him to sign. In exchange for another chance at life, Yuji was gonna be the instrument for vengeance, and he would enforce proper debts. He would be hesitant at first, but he would agree to the conditions of this binding vow in the end, or contract, whichever one you want to call it. Yuji would end up being reborn, sort of, but here he would have realized something. Well, he wouldn't realize it at first, but he would realize this later. He didn't have an ounce of cursed energy. He would instead have something else. Hellfire. He would be hidden from the higher ups for now, and he would wake up in Shoko's office, surprising her and Gojo alike, who had came in to check on the condition of Yuji. He had hoped that she could have done something to save him, maybe revive him, but the odds were kinda slim at first. Shoko would tell Gojo that this was not her work. This was something else entirely. And Gojo could see it in Yuji's eyes. He was not the same anymore. He couldn't see an ounce of cursed energy within Yuji's body either. This was quite peculiar to him. For now though, Yuji would be granted a heavy combat chain with a blade attached to the end, and he would be sent to work with Nanami as a way of learning to fight with a cursed tool, since he couldn't use cursed energy anymore. Nanami would be intrigued by Yuji's comments about smelling the ash of sins. He didn't really know what that was all about, to be honest, but it definitely did pique his interest. He would also notice something a bit odd about Yuji. You see, he would have been noticing the charts that he left behind on the enemies that he attacked. And to Nanami's recollection, this chain of Yuji's, it didn't have that sort of ability, nah. All he was aware of was that it was supposed to be able to extend at immeasurable lengths. And of course, we have the Mato arc. So after Yuji meets Junpei and everything, well, yeah, that transfiguration would end up happening, and of course, Junpei would end up dying. With this tragic transfiguration being witnessed by Yuji, he would have completely lost it. You see, Yuji's human flesh, it would have burned away into a flaming skull. He would have manifested the Ghost Rider for the very first time, fully. When Mahato attempted to touch Yuji's chest, the Hellfire violently fought back against him, and he would char his hands. Yuji would catch him in burning chains right after, and this would execute a partial penance stare. He would have incinerated his special grade body into grey ash, forcing a traumatized fragment of Mahito's soul to escape down the drains, just barely able to make it by. Here, honestly, it's probably important to actually explain just how Yuji's abilities work here as a ghostwriter. You see, Yuji he has Hellfire. So Yuji's Hellfire allows him to channel, well, Hellfire, I guess, supernatural Hellfire, which feeds on sin. It will cloak his fists and weapons, and it will bypass traditional defenses in order to melt cursed energy and directly char the soul, or burn the soul, whichever one you want to go with. Okay, of course, he also has this penance stare, which is supposed to be a domain counter as well. Of course, he's incapable of standard domain expansions due to having no cursed energy. So instead, Yuji has the ability to turn an enemy's domain against them by locking eyes to execute the penance stare, and this will force them to feel all of the suffering that they have ever inflicted. And when it comes on to Sukuna in this version of events, yeah, he's low-key cooked, because the spirit of vengeance able to build an inescapable cage of hellfire and chains around him within Yuji's body, which would basically reduce the King of Curses to some sort of burned spectator, to be honest. Yeah. And when it comes on to Yuji's heart, that would have been replaced by a smoldering ember of hellfire, and his eyes, they would occasionally flash between a molten orange and regular eyes, I guess you could say, which would leave Gojo 6's eyes completely fascinated, because, well, he has no cursed energy, but yet he has this massive weight of retribution at the same time. It's like you're kind of some sort of paradox. You are something that is entirely new. Anime would have made a mistake of reporting this to the higher ups, and of course the higher ups they would be fearful of this Yuji. Yuji would have ended up, well, having the Kyoto students try to assassinate him because of the fear that the higher ups had. This would have also included Todo. But of course, the two they would have ended up befriending each other. Todo and Yuji would have had a very great bond from the very get-go, but Todo would have realized something when interacting with Yuji, and that was, well, his boogie woogie. It did not work on Yuji. He couldn't swap Yuji normally, because Yuji's equivalent to a heavenly restriction basically registered him as some sort of inanimate object, and of course, in order for Boogie Woogie to work, he needs cursed energy. When Hanami invades Todo, he would swap the curse directly into Yuji's path though. Yuji's radiant heat able to turn Hanami's plants into drifting ash, his hellfire able to burn away at Hanami's soul, based on their past sins, what he deemed to be sins, and his presence would have choked out Hanami's domain expansion before Yuji completely vaporized the curse with a blazing fist. With Mahito being in this weakened state, hiding with a remnant of a soul, he would have lacked the power to infiltrate Jujutsu High, to incarnate Choso, Eso, and Kachizu here. So yeah, that whole arc is just completely gone. And with this new version of Yuji, Gojo, he would have honestly began to show more interest in him. It wouldn't have been intentional though. He was just more capable and needed for, well, yeah, the bigger missions. It honestly did come off as favoritism to the rest of Team Gojo, though. To make matters worse, Gojo, he would have honestly just decided to take Yuji to some sort of isolated military bunker one day in order to help him learn to open the valve to this sort of cosmic furnace or supernatural furnace. He didn't really know what to call it. He didn't fully grasp this Ghost Rider Spectre thing. All he knew was that he just needed a way to better channel it without letting the spirit consume his humanity. And he would decide to reveal to Yuji that he purchased a rugged, heavy tactical motorcycle for Yuji to use as some sort of conduit to anchor and direct his wild hellfire. And of course, upon transformation, the motorcycle's rubber tires, they would have become white hot fire, and the engine, it would have roared with the sound of what you could probably compare to trapped demons, literally roaring in pain or something. And the headlights, yeah, they would have cut through Jujutsu veils pretty easily. And this would allow Yuji to cross into spiritual domains instantly. With Gojo deploying Yuji on all these high profile missions to dismantle Kenjaku syndicates, it would have built a heavy wall between Yuji and his classmates. You see, Megumi and Nobara, they were left bruised and battered from standard missions, but Yuji, he would have been returning physically unbruised. But what they wouldn't have realized, though, is that spiritually he was isolated by the horrors of the penance stare. They wouldn't be able to see that, so they wouldn't understand. They would have only seen the favoritism that Gojo had showed towards him, even getting him a whole bike as a gift. This was clearly the teacher's pet at this point. Kenjaku, on the other hand, he would have been stressed beyond belief, realizing that, well, all of his plans, they were just falling apart because of this anomaly that Yuji had turned into. Kenjaku would have dropped all pretenses of a clean strike here, and he would have launched a massive multi-layered curtain over Tokyo when it was finally Halloween. And he would have unleashed tens of thousands of curses to cause total chaos. Gojo, he would have entered the subway alone in order to handle the crowds, and he would have successfully been trapped in a prison realm when Kenjaku decided to reveal himself. Kenjaku, he would have decided to also use high-grade barriers to completely isolate Yuji on the surface streets. Jogo, he would have intercepted Yuji on a ruined highway, and he would unleash Maximum Meteor. But Yuji, he would have just driven his Hellfire Cruiser straight up the falling magma, completely unaffected, like this was just a regular Tuesday for him. He would have explained to Jogo that, yeah, his fire, it's purely physical. Yuji's own, it was completely different. It was on a completely different scale. His own was straight up conceptual. And Yuji wouldn't have caught Jogo's volcanic hands, turning his magma into cold soup. Yuji, he would have driven his hellfire-infused fist through Jogo's eye socket right after, and this would instantly incinerate the special grey curse into a little pile of grey ash before a domain could even be formed. A heavily stitched, desperate Mahato would creep out of the shadows in order to ambush Nobara. Though she fought back fiercely, a stray touch would have ended up detonating a part of her face and caused for her to collapse. Yuji would have arrived too late, and he would have witnessed a pretty fateful scene. It was practically something coming out of the finger bear situation.
just that the roles were reversed here. Because Nobara and Megami, they were both brutally bad, just to say the very least. You see, Megami, he would have been pushed to the absolute brink of despair, and he would have unleashed his ultimate failsafe, the eight-handled, sword-divergent, Scylla, Divine General Maharaga. This is the last time I'm ever saying the full name, by the way. Maharaga would have manifested, and he would have instantly crushed the remaining curses, and this would also frighten Mahato back into hiding, and he would have turned the unchained, destructive gaze on Shibuya. As Megami, he would have fallen into a fatal coma, considering the fact that he was already severely bleeding out. Spotting his motionless friends, Yuji, he would have entered a total state of I said total twice. Man, forget it. He would have entered a total state of total silent rage. Yeah, I'm doubling down on it. Relinquishing unconditional control to the spirit of vengeance as his flames would turn a blindingly hot white and miles-long breasted chains would burst from the asphalt. Maharaga's sword of extermination would outstrike Yuji, but the positive energy would fail to do anything. Yuji would wrap his white hot chains around the Shikigami, slamming it through buildings, and Maharaga's wheel began to spin and adapt. It would instead shatter and melt into slag. It was unable to comprehend or adapt to the conceptual framework of retribution and time. Yuji, he would have grabbed Maharaga's face and forced an intense amount of hellfire to burn through the Shikigami. It would eat at their cursed energy until there was none left, and the Shikigami would turn into ash after. With his plans officially entirely ruined, his curses destroyed, and the culling games rendered unplayable. Yeah, you see, a terrified Kenjaku, he would have decided to, just slip away into the night with the sealed prison realm. At the very least, he would have successfully gotten rid of Gojo, the Six Eyes user. He would try again in maybe like another 400 years or something. Shoko and the remaining sorcerers would rush a surviving Megami and Nobara, just barely, to medical tents. But Yuji, he would have realized his presence. It only seemed to attract more enemies with time, and these enemies they only continued to get more powerful as well. He didn't want to put such a burden onto his friends, so he decided that he was not even going to speak to the Jujutsu higher-ups. He had already seen the consequences of just existing, so instead, Yuji would kick the starter of his motorcycle. He would ignite his flaming tires, and he would ride out of the smoking ruins of Shibuya in order to hunt the rest of the sins of the world alone in the dark. And the legend of the Ghost Rider would start from there. But yeah, that's about it, y'all. If y'all like the video, you guys know what to do. Like, hit that subscribe button, all that good stuff, and comment with other what ifs you want to see in the future. Beyond that, it's Apollo out.